Hello, and welcome back to our study of Mexico. Today we're going to learn about Mexico's history. There's a lot in this module, so make sure you take some breaks if you need to in between so that you are able to absorb all the major points. Let's start with the vocab words. As always, very important words when we start talking about the history of Mexico that we understand and know. The first is maize, which is obviously corn. Astronomy is the study of stars and planets. That's going to be very important when we start talking about some of the first groups to ever come to Mexico. Aqueducts, which I actually got a picture of because it makes it a lot easier to understand, are channels that help carry water. And as we know, in parts of Mexico, there's some deserts, right? So these are actually like, kind of think of it like a man-made smaller version of like the canal and Windsor locks that can actually take water from one place to another. Conquistador, when we start talking about people taking over parts of Mexico, it's a soldier explorer, so someone that is exploring an area but also is a soldier. And then the Mexican Revolution, which is a period of armed rebellion in which the Mexican people fought for their freedom. So we're going to start in early Mexico, and we're looking way back to thousands of years ago. And the first people that lived in Mexico, they were considered hunters and gatherers. And if you haven't heard that term, what that basically means is they would hunt and gather food, and they would kind of follow the animals. They would follow the food. So they didn't have a permanent settlement. They started growing maize, corn, about 7,000 years ago, and they're credited as the first group to start farming in the Americas. The Olmecs, and this historians would argue that this was maybe the first civilization to arrive to kind of come up in Mexico. And this was in 15 BCE, which is approximately 3,515 years ago. Long time. They were advanced for their time. They developed a political system, a religion, a writing system, and also are credited with one of the world's first calendars. They became great farmers, and they were big into the slash and burn techniques, which we've talked about before, basically where you cut down an area of growth and you burn it. And when you burn it, it actually becomes great to farm on. However, slash and burn techniques actually does, in the long term, ruin the soil. So it's a good short-term farming, not a good long-term. We're going to spend a great deal when we start talking about Central America, talking about the Mayans and Aztecs, but we're going to give you a brief preview today on two of the greatest early civilizations in the entire world's history. So let's start with the Mayans, and they came after the Olmecs, and they came to power in southern Mexico and in the central countries of Guatemala and Belize, and that's why we're going to really focus on them when we start talking about Central America, but they also had parts of their empire in Mexico. They built many cities with thousands of people. So this Native American group built huge cities. They created pyramids and temples, some of which still stand today. My picture right here is one of the pyramids. This is present day. They still stand. They excelled in astronomy. So they were very advanced in studying stars and planets, and that they're able to use that astronomy to create one of the world's first calendars that's almost still accurate to today. They declined in 900 AD, so about 1,000 years ago, and no one really knows why. They kind of disappeared. They had these great huge cities, and then they disappeared, and it's still kind of a mystery in history of why they disappeared, and you can actually do a lot of research on that. However, there still are people of Mayan descent living in Mexico today that practice the same types of religion and same traditions that the Mayans did. Coming after the Mayans were the Aztecs, and they emerged in the 1400s, about 600 years ago, so still a long time ago. They settled in the Valley of Mexico, and the Valley of Mexico, as we know, is located in the Mexican Plateau, but also is right where Mexico City is now located. They built their capital, Tenochtitlan, in the middle of a lake. And you can see this picture here a little bit, the lake. They built it in the middle of the lake for protection, obviously. Just kind of unheard of at the time. The city housed over 150,000 people, and it was the largest Native American city ever. The Aztecs were great farmers, and they developed aqueducts, which we talked about earlier, to help bring water to their capital because they didn't have water right in their capital. Yes, they were built around a lake, but they had to get the water to the capital. They used aqueducts to do it. One of the major differences between the Aztecs and Mayans is they had a very, very, very strong military, and they expanded their empire before being conquered by the Spanish, which we're going to talk about next. And basically, they expanded throughout Mexico, and they conquered many places because of their strength in their military. But all things sometimes, as some people say, all things come to an end, and the Aztecs' rule came to the end quite quickly when it did. A Spanish conquistador, which we know a conquistador means a explorer / soldier, right here. Hernan Cortez arrived in Mexico, and he conquered the Aztecs in 2 years. Now, there is some great research that could be done in upcoming classes and upcoming projects on how Cortez was able to, with way less men and weapons, able to conquer the Aztecs, and it's a great topic. So basically, Cortez destroyed Tenochtitlan, burned it to the ground, and built Mexico City, which is still there now today. Mexico then became a colony of Spain, so kind of like America was a colony of Great Britain before our Revolutionary War. Mexico was a colony of Spain. The Spanish people took control of all the jobs and the money. So some people from Spain with a lot of money and power came over, and then they controlled everything. The native people that were still living there had very few rights. The Spanish began to convert the natives to the Roman Catholic Church, so they were changing their religion. And many churches were built, and the leaders of the churches became very, very powerful. We're going to stop there for the first part, and you can pick up on the next video for the rest of Mexico's history.